Hello, and welcome to Insider Insights. I'm Emma Wegner, Associate Educator in Public Programs and Creative Practice at the Met. In this series, we're providing closer looks at objects from the collection and exhibitions with Met experts. We hope you'll continue to join us as we debut each new video. Today, we're joined by three of my colleagues responsible for the gardens at the Cloisters, the branch of the Met dedicated to the art and architecture of medieval Europe, located in Fort Tryon Park. Mark Montefusco is managing horticulturist at the museum. He will speak of the significance of the seasons in the agrarian calendar of medieval Europe. Next, gardener Yvette Weaver will tell us about the work that goes into propagating, planting, and caring for the gardens at the Cloisters. Finally, assistant horticulturist Carly Still will discuss the annual holiday decorations at the museum and the many preparations that go into this much-loved display. Thank you all for joining us and sharing your expertise. I'll hand the presentation over to Mark.
Thank you so much, Emma. It's my pleasurable job today to introduce the program by introducing the medieval agricultural cycle. The medieval times were entirely based on an agrarian economy, and the proper times for planting and harvesting and storage were really what kept not only medieval society going, but medieval society alive. You might think that the medieval year, the agricultural year, began in perhaps the New Year or Easter or springtime, but in fact, it began at about the time we were recording this session in the fall. All the harvesting was finished, all the records had been kept, all the new administrative decisions for the farm community have been made, and then all the new planting and all the new preparation began. So it's really the perfect time to examine this. And the emblem of this big change was the Archangel Michael. This is an image from the Cloisters collections. And Michael looks pretty conventional, except for the wings. But you'll notice that he is in the process of defeating Satan. And Satan's actually pretty cool if you get to see him in person. But Michael was considered to be the protector of the people. He was considered to be the bringer of the light. And that's why this time of year is dedicated to him, and why Michaelmas, his holiday, was considered to be the turning point of the medieval year. To illustrate this a little bit more clearly from the collections, I'm going to show you some illustrations from one of our great treasures, the Book of Hours by Simon Benning. And I put this up on the screen with a little measurement to show you exactly how small this object is and how incredibly detailed and intricate the paintings are. So we'll wind back to spring and planting. We're seeing a number of interesting things, or at least they're interesting to me, and about medieval agriculture and medieval agricultural technology here. For example, you notice that the plow is being pulled by horses. Earlier in the Middle Ages, it would have been pulled by oxen. Oxen are very unwieldy. They don't have a long working life, either by the day or overall. And the necessity to make the furrows, the beds as long as possible, actually changed the face of the medieval landscape. But once the horse collar had been introduced from China, you can see the horse collars there, horses were actually a much better choice for plowing. There's also some interesting technological developments on the plow itself. You really can't see it, but right behind the horse's legs is a knife that went down and cut the sod, making it much easier to turn. There were wheels, which made it easier to pull the plow. There was a new type of mold board, which rather than just dig down into the soil, literally turned it over. And finally, the plowman had much better control by this time in history of the plow and was able to turn and maneuver much better. Off to the right, you can see someone handling really one of the most precious commodities of the agrarian community, and that was the seed that had been harvested from the previous year and was about to be planted and used in the coming year. In the middle of the season, haying was an extremely important activity because hay was the food, the fuel that kept the livestock going during the winter. And if there was a bad hay harvest, um, things could get really ugly in the colder months. Two things I want to point out about this painting is the figure on the left in blue. That is the figure of a woman, and women were intimately involved in virtually all aspects of agriculture, except perhaps the plowing and some of the really, really heavy stuff. And they had their own areas of expertise, including the making of ale. The other point I want to make about this painting is that if you look off to the right, you'll see this lovely dappled meadow with little bits and pieces of flowers showing through it. And this really represents one of the aesthetic ideals for medieval horticulture and agriculture. It's referred to sometimes as the enameled mead or the starry meadow. And it's something that we try to capture at the cloisters themselves. And finally, the harvest. The harvest was, as I say, absolutely critical. Most of the crop grown was grain, and the most highly regarded grain was wheat. Most of the wheat went to the Lord. Some of the peasantry got to keep a little bit of it, but they usually had their own grains that they grew either on their own pieces of property or that the Lord would want grown as well. And once again, off to the left, we see a woman binding sheaves, and another woman off to the right, hopefully bringing some refreshment for the hardworking field workers. So now we're going to turn to the things that we actually grow and harvest at the cloisters themselves. This year, my colleagues planted and grew this lovely patch of rye, which not only is good to eat, but is, I think, quite beautiful. One thing that we learned, or at least that I learned, is that the timing of the harvest is critical. If you try to harvest too early, the grain is not ripe, it's difficult to process, and it will not last. If you harvest too late, you'll find that the mice and birds have already gotten at a large part of your harvest. We grow hops. In this case, up a trellis in one of the cloister gardens. And hops, as we all know today, was a flavoring and a preservative for beer. I thought it fascinating that earlier in the Middle Ages, hops was considered to be an adulterant, and someone who was found putting hops into their beer could actually be fined. While in the northern half of Europe, beer and ale were the principal drinks, in Central and Southern Europe, wine was the daily beverage. Wine appeared in many cases at every single meal. And it was very critical to carry on the agricultural practices that had really begun with the Roman colonization of Europe. This particular grape grows in our courtyard outside the building itself, and it's I think, extremely decorative and not bad tasting either. This year we grew buckwheat. Buckwheat is obviously not a member of the grass family like wheat or rye would be, but it does produce a little nutlet, which can be ground up and made into noodles and bread, and in fact has become more popular over the past few years. Two of our treasures are two pear trees that live out in the Bonifant garden. They're grown up against a wall. And this particular tree was planted in about 1940. We had a lovely crop of pears this year, and pears would have been used as cooked fruit, and they would also have been used to make perry, which is the pear equivalent of cider. In the same garden in Bonifant, we have 4 very respectable quince trees, which have been there for decades. Quinces were used to make jams and pastes. And if you've ever had a cheese tray at a fancy restaurant, you might have gotten a little bit of quince paste called membrillo to go along with your cheeses. I think this is our most medieval looking fruit. To me, it always looks like a battle mace. And this is the medlar, and it's a relative of the hawthorn. It's an acquired taste. In order for it to be able to eat this, you have to pick it, put it in the dark, and essentially let it rot. The word for rotting a medlar is blet. And if you play either Scrabble or Boggle, it's a very, very useful word. It's probably a more useful word than the medlar is itself. Many people refer to these as Chinese lanterns, but they're in fact European, and they're related to nightshade and tomatoes and that whole family. And if you open these up, it's hard to imagine opening them up because they're so beautiful, but if you open them up, you'll find a little berry inside, which is edible and quite tasty. And finally, this year, our fig trees produced a fig. And although we were all looking forward to eating it, the ants beat us to it. So that's a brief look at what the medieval agricultural cycle would have looked like and how we reflect it and study it here at the Cloisters Gardens. And now it's my very great pleasure to pass the baton on to my colleague, Yvette Weaver, who will take up the next part of the presentation.
Thank you, Mark, for starting us off with a historical context for seasonal changes in parts of medieval Europe, as well as describing some of the plants in our gardens. Whether it was during the Middle Ages or it is present day, this time of year comes with significant shifts and changes. On a fall afternoon, as I was heading home, I was able to capture an unbelievable fall sunset, exemplifying the amber tones and the seasonal warmth of autumn. With this change of light comes transformation in the gardens. Often visitors think that it means the horticultural staff will have less work. In fact, one of the most frequently asked questions is, what do you do after the summer? This question often gives me a chuckle because as soon as the fall arrives, we enter the busiest stretch, and I'm excited to invite you into a behind the scenes look at what the turn of the year means for our work in the gardens. I will focus on bulb planting and our propagation operation. Here we are in the Judy Black Garden, located in Cuxa Gallery. If you look along the arcades, you can see that glass is being installed to prepare the gallery for the winter. With the garden enclosed, we are now able to dive into an immense project of planting 10,000 bulbs in the Judy Black Garden and just over 3,000 between Bonifant and Tree Gardens. The garden is not as lush and full as you might find it in the summer, and the grasses are beginning to fade, all signs that it's time for us to begin our fall cutback, which means we remove the annuals from the beds and we cut back the abundant foliage of the perennials. If you bring your eyes to the left side of this photo, you can see bulbs have been laid out in spaces between the perennials. Before planting, Carly and I have pre-sorted all of the bags by bloom times and have divided the bags into groups of 4, 1 for each quadrant. And then we begin placing the bulbs with thoughts of timing, balance, and color combinations. Here's a photo that gives a good sense of what a layout looks like. This was a large project of bluebell bulbs being planted along the walkway to the entrance of the museum. With so many bulbs to plant, we often need a few staff volunteers to help us accomplish our install. Once we've planted the bulbs in the gardens, we move on to potting up our bulbs for forcing. Here in this photo, you can see Carly potting tulips. Forced bulbs allow us to bring vibrant and cheerful color into Cuxa Gallery during the drab winter months. This is a close-up of the potted tulips. Here's another type of bulb, the Leucojum vernus, also known as snowbells. The timing of forced bulbs is important. Bulbs need between 10 to 14 weeks to experience a chilling period to spark them into pushing out foliage. Every year, we have approximately 5 different types of bulbs that will be forced. In this photo, you can see fully prepared pots that will be moved into our cold frames. This is a beautiful snowy day in Bonifant Garden. Some people prefer to have fewer cold days, but for me, this is another cool temperature day that I know the bulbs need for their dormancy, or that chilling period. Once we pass the 70 or so days of cool weather, we can begin to pull out sets of potted bulbs. Here you can see hyacinths and daffodils, which have been pulled for the first succession of blooming pots. The lights help to encourage growth and budding. As you can see, these bright and lively colors will bring an early feel of spring to Cuxa Gallery. Not only are these blooming pots uplifting, but the hyacinths release a sweet and floral scent that is lifting and joyous. In this photo, Carly is potting up budded bulbs into our signature Terra Rosa pots. Terra Rosa means red earth. These pots are hand thrown in Italy, and they're the only pots you will see in our gardens and galleries. In the pot, you can see hyacinths, and Carly is holding muscari that will be tucked in between. I love this photo because this is the beginning of spring, which comes early at the cloisters, but we know it'll be welcomed by visitors and staff. These pots are all staged and ready to be placed throughout Cuxa Gallery. There are hyacinths, tulips, daffodils. In the background, there are lavenders, rosemary, and cypress. The pots are all topped with moss to give them a completed look. On the left are the muscari, and on the right are Fritillaria meleagris. Flushes of bulbs will be added to the display every week towards the end of February through March. As I mentioned earlier, I would also talk about our on-site propagation. Here are just a few of the hundreds of seed packets that we have in our stock. Because of our unique plant collection, many seeds are ordered from companies in England and France. But we also collect seed from the garden. On the top right, I'm holding seeds of Pulsatilla vulgaris, which is also known as pasca flower. On the bottom are seeds of Viola odoratus, both collected in our gardens. Once the seeds are sown, we get seedlings. They will then be pricked out and individually potted up. The top right is my workstation, and you can see the propagation schedule that I have created, which is that piece of paper that's probably just for half of January to start off with. And we sow approximately 300 varieties of seeds starting in January. Once the individual plant is potted up, they will go under lights to be nurtured and carefully watched for any pests. You can also see all the tags which help us keep track of the 20,000 seedlings that are grown on site. With so many plants, I'm a real stickler for labels and organization. Luckily, Carly is there supporting me in this. After the lights, the plants are moved outside to be hardened off and acclimatized to the sun. Soon enough, they will be planted in one of our areas. The hard work that goes into our bulbs and propagation gives us the vibrant and specialized gardens visitors get to experience throughout the growing season. And it gives us a little downtime before we start to prepare for the following fall season. I'm very excited to pass this presentation on to Carly Still, who will talk more about the work and the preparation behind our holiday decorations.
Thank you, Yvette. I am so excited to begin planting our bulbs in the coming weeks. Today, I will be talking about the holiday decorations at the Met Cloisters, which is one of my favorite projects to work on in the fall and winter months. What makes the Cloisters decorations so unique is that all the plant material we use is fresh and also associated with the medieval celebration of Christmastide. You will not find your familiar Christmas trees on display at the museum because it is a later tradition, but what you will find are boxwood, lady apples, hazelnuts, ivy, rose hips, and pine cones, plants that are available in winter and naturally used for decoration. They are the main elements for 4 arches that are hung in the main hall, which you can see in this beautiful image. In addition to these arches, we have large displays of potted plants throughout the Judy Black Garden in Kusha Cloister, which you can see in the top image, just lovely. And also floral displays on the candelabras throughout the main floor of the museum, which you can see examples of in the lower images. My mission today is to give you a behind-the-scenes look at the incredible amount of time and energy that goes into decking the halls of the Met Cloisters. And so I begin with ivy. This is one of the main elements on the arches. We set out into Fort Tryon Park and clip roughly 3,000 pieces of ivy. Yvette and I are known to be ruthless in our selection of leaves. We want perfect, large, unblemished, rich ivy leaves that we then hand wash individually. This gives us a second opportunity to review our selection and make harsh edits if needed. Each leaf is then inserted into a pre-filled water pick, which you can see here. Prior to our picking, we have filled 3,000 water picks with water and a bit of floral food. And this is what 3,000 picked, washed, and poked ivy leaves looks like. This project takes us roughly a week to complete, and the leaves will be stored in a cool place until our installation night. It's really quite remarkable that this little water pick will keep these leaves looking so vibrant and green for well over a month. And my next main element for the arches are hazelnuts. Every few years we have to remake these, and we undertook this incredible project last year. We ordered 22 pounds of hazelnuts, which is roughly 3,000 nuts. With steady hands, we hand drill a tiny hole into each nut, dab a bit of hot glue onto it, and insert a wire into it. And you can see this in the left image. We then take 5 or 6 of those, wrap it around a little wooden pick, seen on the right image, and these will be inserted into the main arch. This project took us approximately 2 weeks to complete. It's important to note that we have a lot of help from our garden volunteers, as well as colleagues at the museum who generously donate their time to help us with the decorations. And here you can see Yvette and I busy working away in our workshop space, surrounded by fresh greenery, which is in fact boxwood tips. Every year we're shipped 125 pounds of fresh boxwood that we then break down by hand. This is the base layer of the arches, which is then covered by ivy and hazelnuts, so most visitors don't actually see this layer. And you can see in this area of the photo, the straw base which the boxwood is inserted into. We cover 5 arches with this boxwood, and each arch takes us about 2 full days of work to complete. Here is another glimpse into our workshop space, and I am going to be focusing on these lovely lady apples down in this section of the photograph. The lady apples are by far the most time-intensive component of our holiday decorations. In total, we are delivered 440 pounds of lady apples. Each week, for 4 consecutive weeks, we get deliveries of 110 pounds of apples. And again, Yvette and I are ruthless. We inspect each individual apple for any bruising or blemishing, and if you make the cut, then the apple will then be hand polished with a simple rag until it shines. We have been known to repolish apples because they have not been shiny enough. Each apple is poked with a pick to insert into the arch on installation night. Once a week, we remove the apples and replace them with our freshly polished apples. So it's very fair to say that we are polishing apples for a month straight. Here you can see Yvette working hard as usual in our back workshop space. You can see obviously all of the greenery strewn on the floor, and she is busy working on some jasmine, and she has a bit of fresh holly in her hand as well. This image is to illustrate that in addition to all the preparations for the arches, we are also busy potting up plants that will go on display in the Judy Black Garden in Kusha Cloister. Here you can see pots of cyclamen, hellebore, beautiful ivies, and of course the jasmines here. Last year, we had well over 175 potted plants on display that were specifically selected for the holiday decorations. You will also always find bay laurel and rosemary and boxwood plants as well. And we're finally here at installation night. It takes us one evening after the museum has closed, and we work for approximately 6 to 7 hours to complete all 4 arches. Each arch has 2 people working on it, one on a rig and one on a ladder. And then we have helpers running around handing us things. Here you can see Lucretia Cargier, our conservator, who helped us last year with the installation. You can see that the boxwood base has been installed, and then the lady apples, rose hips, and hazelnuts have been inserted. The area in between where the boxwood is seen will then be covered with our ivy. And here we have our finished product on the left side, the beautiful completed arch. And on the right side is just a really beautiful detailed shot of our freshly polished apples and just that pop that nice shine gives, and our beautiful rich green ivy leaves. We also make a holly arch that's installed at the main entrance to the museum. We're shipped 100 pounds of fresh English holly from out west that we break down by hand and insert into the arch. It takes us roughly 2 to 3 days to make this arch. And I think visitors really love to walk underneath this arch into the museum. It really sets the tone of the holiday spirit and festivities at the museum. And this is just a great example of the rich red berries of the English holly. They stay incredibly vibrant and fresh in the cool winter air for well over a month. Just gorgeous. And we finished our installation of the arches, and our potted plants are in the Judy Black Garden in Kusha Cloister. And then we really get to have some fun decorating the candelabras in the galleries. Here in this photo, you can see that we have carts packed with fresh flowers, like our beautiful white roses. We have anemones, hellebores. We have even fresh pomegranates that we use. And then this down here, just fresh greenery of yew and juniper that we cut from the park. And we get to make these on the candelabras. Each candelabra is different, and it gives us an opportunity to work spontaneously and creatively with the fresh floral material. Every week we change the flowers and evergreens, so these are constantly changing from week to week. And again, visitors love to see us working on these with our packed carts and are really curious as to what we're doing. Here on the left side, you can see a nice view into the gallery with 2 of our candelabras. And on the right side is a beautiful detailed shot of our fresh roses. And of course, we always have ivy and berry as well. And this will be my last slide. This is a view into the Langone Chapel, where we decorate 2 large candelabras with obviously fresh flowers and greenery. And we always have this beautiful wheat sheaf out on display as well. So that concludes my glimpse into the holiday decorations, and I will take it back to Yvette and Mark. Thank you.
Well, thank you both, Yvette and Carly, for those riveting presentations. And I like to think that visitors who have been to the cloisters will look at this video and think, wow, that's what goes on behind the scenes. That's what it takes to make those gardens and those halls look the way they do. And visitors who've not been into the cloisters will look at that video and say, that looks really, really cool. I've got to go visit it. So we're winners either way. And it's just been a pleasure listening to both of your presentations.
Well, thank you, Mark. And I'm really looking forward to jumping into our seasonal and holiday decorations. And Mark, also, this will be your first time joining us in this, so it'll be wonderful to have you a part of the team poking ivy and making arches.
Yes, thank you. I'm so excited for all of our projects coming up with the bulbs and holiday decorations, and then of course our bulb displays, which will be ready for the spring. So I think that there's just so much to look forward to at the cloisters, and we hope that people will come see all of our hard work. Thank you for joining us for Insider Insights.